Should I just go?
So Dahlia, you can go ahead.
Thank you. So thank you. I appreciate the chart. It is helpful. I know it's a first step, and I second my colleagues in saying I do think it's important. This is a pretty large subject to tackle. I do think we need to tackle it, and I think we need to start looking at the best practices. I agree, Dr. Brabram. We have to think about what are the goals of those practices. If it's just capacity, it's one. If it's capacity, equity under one Fairfax, neighborhoods, programmatic. In my district, it's my AAP centers that have more than 1,000 kids in them, those schools. So we really, I think have to start to look at the holistic system and not just the regular boundaries, but all of our programs and what that means for our schools. So I don't know how we tackle that, but and try to make it less political as much as we can, because I think that also is an issue that comes up. And I think trying to bring that and create something that's not just a committee that will go nowhere, but a true task force with outside support, and maybe that work in education and other industries. I don't know how we get there, but it is time that we really looked at it, because some of the issues in our, honestly, in our segregation in our schools right now is from our housing patterns. Some of it is from our own programmatic and boundaries. So I think we have to be honest and figure out how to tackle that. And I do think the policy for us at the policy level, helping decide what some of those factors should be, is the most important part. That is our role, is to decide what are the factors that we want to consider. So I do want to make sure we have that conversation, as opposed to just jumping into the weeds of the actual boundaries, but what do we want to see as a successful boundary system. And then one of the biggest concerns I hear from my families is the lack of predictability. So I know in some of our conversations, I've heard school board members, and I really appreciate your research, Jessica, Ms. Gillis, in that there are ways to try to address that as well. In that I've had families say, I get it, it's not great, I don't want to change my school, but if we have to, I just want to know and be able to plan and not have to wait every single year to get the numbers to know whether or not my child, who maybe, and some of them have struggled to adjust to one school, will now have to be at another. So I think that's another factor that I hope we can figure out in this process, is how do we address some of our challenges, but also figure out a more predictable way for our community or schools, our staff, to know what's coming down the pipeline for them. So I think that's the second big one. And the third one, and I was not here when the conversation was had to try to change this in the past, but I do think we have to figure out proper phasing, grandfathering, looking at what is our goal, where do we want to be. But in the meantime, kids, families, staff are going to be affected, and communities. So what is the phasing out plan of our old system, school by school, child by child, really at that point, until we get to where we want to be, because it's the pace of change that I think often brings a lot of discomfort and just, changes the experience for our kids and our family. So I think for me, I appreciate this as the start of a conversation. I do think we need to give guidance as to where we want this to go. But I would say that focusing on our policy priorities for any possible change, on looking at how we get information for changing those boundaries, both for neighborhood schools, but for all of our programs, and figuring out how to make them more predictable and phasing out to a new program. So thank you. I think that's where I am, and look forward to hearing our other colleagues.
Okay, do we have anyone else? I'm going to speak, but I'm actually going to allow the people who have go-backs to go ahead. because somebody may have a go back on mine. So I have Janie and Megan on go backs.
Okay, first of all, I appreciate Mr. Moon's comments about sort of best practice, because I am not real sure that there is any one numerical formula that's going to work for everything. It is just simply complicated, and I respect everybody's desire to go back in and take a look at this, and because we can see that there are some changes that are going to come, and it is time to look at it again. And I think I've been through a process 3 times in the last 30 years, and it's always hard. And changing boundaries is never easy. So it's no matter what we come down with, it's there is no kumbaya moment. But looking holistically at where we have been, I do think in the past when we look at capacity, we look at our values, we look at program, we look at geographic proximity, all of those things. And then what is a community willing to do? All of those things, you know, we have meetings, and it's just simply not easy. And I know, Ms. Palcher, you talk about stability, that's important. Some of the things many, many years ago when I first started, it was when we were closing schools, and we did a huge fruit basket upset. And soon thereafter, the school board actually backed off of a lot of stuff because they thought it was, oh my, that was destabilizing. And sort of broad consensus in the county is that we're not going to do magnets as a way to, you know, reorganize, because first of all, the traffic is such you can't get here from there. And we can't set artificial fast targets of one sort or another. It's always going to be a balancing act because it just doesn't work that way. You know, if the board members, if you all want to bring in a consultant, that's fine. But my only cautionary tale is it is just simply a balancing act. I agree. It is the values, and often it's all the values on the table at once. And then how far can we help the community go when we are having to make some tough decisions? But I would also hope that, again, and I also have to say Herndon Middle School would like their AAP Center. Thank you very much. They are ready. They have been ready for 5 years. Dr. Bravepan. Somebody go check on that one.
We're going to check on that. This is about water valve pressure and being in a test condition. We've tried to restore the water valve pressure, but because it's low, it's making the system think that a sprinkler has released water.
Okay.
And
So
that's why it's going off.
So we can talk over this wonderful sound. Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, that was my go back. But I do think all the values will be on the table, and we'll have another interesting. I guess the bottom line is, in some of the parts of the county where we really are ready to make some large changes, I don't want to put that off too long, because I don't think it's the best use of our resources, and the community can see that we need to make some changes. So I don't want to put some of this stuff off forever. Thanks.
Okay, I want to have us pause for just to see if we can get this off. Just have us pause for a second. People, check your emails, and if we can get this off, then we'll continue.
Ms. Strauss, are you asking for a next step to have a session on the, and it might be actually Ms. Palchik and you and Mr. Moon having a next step, which is having a conversation about the values of the school board on boundaries?
I'm respectful of my colleagues, but I'm saying in my particular part of the county, I think that we are ready to make some shifts. And I don't want to see putting it off for years and years. I'm looking forward to the next CIP beginning to recommend, because we have space, it's real clear in the community what needs to be done, and I'm finding not a lot of resistance. So I am ready in my community to begin to actually talk about, and I think it covers a lot of the values that we're talking about, and I think we have an opportunity to move forward in a reasonable way, reasonable grandfathering, all the rest of that programmatically. So I don't want to see us putting off some of the decisions that I think we are ready to make and are going to have to make. So that's my issue.
Okay.
So.
Madam Chair, should we take a lunch break? Yeah, rather than not doing anything.
That makes sense.
Let's go ahead and break. I'm sorry, we're gonna have to hold you over and come back to finish the discussion, but I think that's the most reasonable use of our time to stay on
there was an
track.
alarm in the lunchroom, so you could grab your food and go outside.